Hello everyone, my name is Protesilaos, also known as Prot. In this video, I will show you how to use abbrev-mode abbreviations in Emacs on a conditional basis, on a case-by-case basis. You want those abbreviations to only appear, to only do something in certain contexts, only if some conditions are met. And I have written a few examples here, which I think cover all the common use cases, so you can copy the code that is here and adapt it to your needs. I will include this code on my website, and if you are watching this on the video hosting platform, there will be a link, so you don't need to copy directly from here. Now, let me show you what an abbreviation is, just for us to be on the same page. I will type here semicolon and then web. And if I do space or enter or something like that, it will expand into what I have configured here, which is my website. So doing something like this, I am able to type something short, which expands into something longer. Now, the way I have configured this is that it works globally. There are no strings attached, no conditionality whatsoever. But there are some abbreviations that I would like to have in special cases. And let's see this one, for example. I want to have an abbreviation that only gets activated when I am writing in French. But if I am not writing in French, I don't want it to show up. And the function I have written here is very simple, and the abbreviation I have is also simple, but let me show you first how it works, and then I will explain what is going on here. So I have defined an abbrev called welcome. And if you type welcome while writing in French, it will expand into je t'en prie. But if you are writing in any other input method, it will just input welcome. Now, Emacs has this concept of the input method, which is effectively a setup wherein the characters you type on your keyboard, on the physical keyboard, correspond to something that the input method has defined. So, for example, if you switch to French AZERTY and you are on a QWERTY keyboard, the letter Q will actually input A if you have the French AZERTY input method. So let's see this now. I will write welcome and see what happens, and welcome again. So nothing happens, no abbreviation whatsoever, okay? So now I will do the French postfix here. There are several French methods, so you can pick the one you like. I personally like French postfix. So now I will do the test again. Welcome, space, and immediately it does this. I will disable the input method, welcome, space, and now it does nothing, you see? And basically, this is the idea behind all these tests that I am doing here. Now, let's take a quick look at what is going on here. Like, how am I able to do this? Define abbrev is the standard function for defining an abbreviation. And the idea is that you give it an abbreviation table, meaning I want these abbreviations to work, to be defined in that context. Global abbrev table, of course, means to be applied to all major modes. Now, there are abbrev tables such as org abbrev table. I think it's called org mode abbrev table, but we can check. But there are all sorts of abbrev tables for major modes. So if, let's say, org mode abbrev table defines welcome and global abbrev table defines welcome, then org will take precedence when we are in an org mode file. And of course, the org mode abbrev table will only apply in org mode, okay? So we can always have our abbreviations where we want them to be. Now, the interesting thing is what happens afterwards. So there is this enable function. Let me see. Oh, my face is in front. Let me just do this. So maybe by wrapping it like this, you can see it, okay? So you should be able to see it now. So what is the interesting part is right here, okay? So we have this enable function. And if we read the documentation of define abbrev, we learn about all the extras that it can do, okay? And I won't read them for you here, but you get the idea, and you can input them like you see here. So I want to enable the function or rather, I want the abbreviation to be enabled when this function, which is the one here, returns non-nil. So let's take a look at the function now very quickly. So non-nil in Emacs Lisp is basically true, but technically we don't have false and true. We have nil, and then everything else is non-nil. Okay, so current input method. In this case, current input method is nil. So what my test is doing is I want to check, does current input method exist, first of all? Is it non-nil? If it is non-nil, then I say, does it have French as one of its constituent words? Let me switch to the input method now, the French input method. And let's check now, what is the value of current input method? Now I see that it is French postfix. And concretely, it is French postfix with double quotes, meaning it is a string. And we can always do Emacs describe variable and actually check that. It says its value is French postfix. If I toggle it off and I check again, its value is nil. Okay, so I know that it is a string. I know that it can have a value. So I am like, okay, if it has a value and that value is a string, I'm like, okay, string match P, which means check that this regular expression, in this case over here, just the word French, check that this regular expression, in this case this word, actually exists in current input method. If it exists, then do your magic. And to confirm, I can check in another program, input method. Let's do, I don't know, let's do Spanish. So let's do Spanish postfix. So let's do hola, welcome. And you see, again, it doesn't do anything. It's not French, it's Spanish. So obviously, it won't work because I defined it to do that thing exactly. So let's actually disable this. And let's continue with our test here, just for you to see, but it's fundamentally the same idea. I have here an example of a directory where I am, let's say, doing some research, okay? And it's a scientific paper, and it has all these weird terms, you know, all that jargon, which I never use anywhere else because normal people don't understand those words. But the academics to whom I will send this paper, they love those words. They really love their jargon. So one such jargon is this thing here, which is uh, it's pronounced prot, but it's not really prot. It's P apostrophe R O with the caron and T. Okay, and it's something new that the scientists have discovered. We don't know exactly what it is, but it keeps people busy. They are talking about them. It keeps them going. So that's why we are also writing this thesis, which includes prot. But of course, I don't want to actually be inputting this. Like, that's very cumbersome to type. What I want to do instead is input something in plain Latin alphabet and then have it expand into whatever fancy script we have here going. So let me show that I have this enabled. The way I have defined this check is, oh, sorry, we don't see the whole thing again. Let me make sure that you are seeing it. So you should be seeing it now. And here, you are seeing the whole thing here. It's really one word, but I will put it below. So you are seeing the whole thing. Okay. So the check I am doing now, it's very simple. I'm just saying, is the current directory equal to the directory where my notes are, or a subdirectory of that. And that's how I have defined it here. But of course, we could change that depending on our needs. But this is how I have it. Is it the directory or a subdirectory of my notes? Okay. And this is my check now. So where is my directory right now? So in Emacs, we have this variable that Emacs updates automatically called the default directory. So if I check the value right now, it is telling me that I am in the home directory. This is how home is represented on Unix-like systems. I am on Linux, of course. So I am in the home directory, meaning that if I were to type now prot, it will I have the wrong function, so it gave me an error. So I have to use the correct function. Let's try again. Prot space, it's just prot. it doesn't return non-nil, right? So the function now returns nil, and I can confirm this by calling the function directly, and we will see what it is doing here. It returns nil. So the way to change the default directory is normally you go to the file in that directory. You do mx find file, for example, find file, or you do mx dred, okay? Or if you don't want to actually do any of those, you can do mx cd, which is of course the standard command in Unix terminals, mx cd, and then you go where you want to go. How did I even call that directory? Abbrev test, like this. Okay, so what does my function return now? It returns true because now I am inside of that directory. Let's confirm. Here, I can see that the default directory now is this one over here, which is exactly what I want it to be. So now let's go ahead and be all fancy with our terminology. Um, um, let's see, the prod that can be named is not the real prod, right? So like that, I can be all smart about it, and it's very nice. So this is great. And if I now just do cd again, and let's say I go to the home directory, let's write it again, the prod that can be named. Okay, I won't actually belabor that point. You see, now it is not expanding, so it does the right thing. So let's continue. The last one over here. Here, what we have is we are simply checking that a certain variable is actually bound and it is non-nil. So let's do again the same thing we are doing here. You can see everything on my screen. I'm now doing it with keycast mode. It is this indicator on my mode line. You see that orange background there. I am doing it with this, but it could really be any variable, really, right? So I think it makes sense to have it like when a certain minor mode is enabled. For example, you want to have a minor mode that focuses the buffer or whatever, right? So maybe that is a heuristic for you to say, well, if I am focusing the buffer, probably I am going to do something, and it makes sense to have this abbreviation there. Like, I don't know. I'm just using this as an example, but you can always combine this with something like an and again, right? So you could say, and this, and I am in my notes directory or whatever, right? So you can always combine these. Actually, let me do it as an example. So let's say I have defined my note directory P. So it would be and keycast and note directory P. Okay, so that's how you would do it. Something like this. Now, I don't need to do all that, but you get the idea, so you can combine your conditions like that. Let's see now. So of course, keycast is running. Therefore, if I now do prot, it will expand into protesilaos, also known as prot. But if I disable keycast, actually, I don't know, will it? Okay, so now it will not do anything. Of course, by doing prot, I overrode the previous one, which was the academic one. So probably I should have used another one here for the example, but you get the idea. This works. Actually, let me see. Let me see if it now knows the previous one. Yes, I did override it, so it doesn't know it, so that's good. Anyway, this is all, folks. I have done a video in the past where I explain other things about abbrev-mode, so you can watch that as well. But fundamentally, this is what you need. You just enable abbrev-mode, of course, for all of this to take effect, and then you define your abbreviations and are good to go. Thank you very much for your attention. As I said, I will include the original code I started with here. I will include it on my website in the publication that embeds this video on my website. So if you are watching this on the video hosting platform, there will be a link in the description and you take it from there. Thank you very much for your attention. Take care and goodbye for now.